in video number 1, we learned a little bit about design systems, what they are, kind of their purpose in the design process, and maybe how you interact with design systems each and every day and just don't know it yet. So design systems, though, are extremely in-depth. Most times they have a large number of designers, developers, contributors to that work that are a part of that team that build it. On my team at the company that I work for, we have 4 designers dedicated just to building our design system, and developers who help support that also. So typically it's not a one-person job. Design systems are extremely in-depth, so don't worry. We're not going to be doing that level of creating a design system. We're kind of just going to be doing a minified version of a style guide, which is going to be just extremely helpful for you as we move into prototyping and UI design. So let me jump into my actual kind of style guide here that I'm creating in Adobe XD. And I'm going to grab some more coffee. I'll probably be drinking this on and off as we go through setting this up real quick. And so what I did with here was I just copied in the minimum requirements that I have in Blackboard. So just a logo, color palette, icon examples, button styles, input fields, and type hierarchy. So like I said, don't spend a ton of time on the logo, but I've included that. I've included that here. As you set up your colors, you might choose to ultimately do, circles for your colors and have 5 circle options to identify what your what your color palette is going to be for your project. And that's okay. You can, I chose to do squares or rectangles, chose to keep it simple. You can do whatever format makes the most sense for your project. The important thing would be is that it's readable, it's understandable, it's not too abstract that the client or the audience, the actual user or viewer of your style guide would be confused as to what the actual color palette is. So it's important to include the actual color itself along with the hex value too. So it's helpful to, this is just the hex value called out. You can find that here. I'm going to actually turn off my border. Let me just choose a random color here. I really love this kind of deep indigo color. And so you can see here I can change this to my hex value. And so I would just pull this out here, and that I've got my 5 options here with the hex values. So you want to include the actual color itself with the hex value. It's just helpful for a developer or somebody who's using this. They're curious about like, hey, what did Ryan use for his primary color, that kind of blue color? Oh, here it is. And I can just copy the hex value and use it in my code if I need to. So here I have this purple color, and again, set up your 5 minimum color palette here. And what you'll want to do is you create these components, create these different styles for your style guide, is actually begin to build your component library here. So this is going to be extremely helpful as you go into your actual prototype design. In project number 1, I gave a brief overview of how to do this. Really in this project, the point of setting up a style guide is for you to get familiarity, for you to get understanding of design systems and style guides, and how doing some of these basic foundational things just helps expedite the process. It's another great deliverable that UI UX designers do, but then also to get familiar and comfortable with using document assets or document libraries like this that will just make your design process that much faster as we move into UI design. So over here, just as a refresher, in the Adobe XD panel, you've got these 3 icons on the bottom. You have libraries, layers, and plugins. So if you click on the libraries option here, you might come directly to this layout. You might be in a layout like this, but essentially you want to be in your document assets here in the top left. And as you're creating these elements, they break this area down naturally into colors, character styles, and components. So as you build out your color palette, just add those colors to your library. I'm going to do just a few here, and I'm just going to add it to my library. So you can see how I can select my colors, and as I build my color palette and I add it to my library, that will continue to grow. And so why that's really helpful and really easy, let's say that you were typing some text out, or you had an icon, or you're creating your buttons. If you have your foundational color palette set into place, then as you create your buttons, you can really select from any color style you want, and your button is going to switch. And you can see it switching there on screen, my large button. And because I have those color styles set up, it just makes my job that much easier as a UI UX designer, as somebody who's going to be laying out 6+ screens for this apartment finder or this apartment complex website, for me to have some basic color palette, a basic color palette here at the very top. So encourage you to do that, and hopefully that was helpful for setting up colors. I'm going to delete these 3 because I'm not going to use those in my color palette there. The next thing that I do is I set up my character styles. And so, like I said, you can use that Typescale website, Google Material. If you search Google Material Typescale, they actually have one that helps generate one also. That's kind of what I base this off of. And so it's important as you set up your Typescale to have everything outlined from an H1 to an H5 or H6 and your body copy here. Typically, what this means is H1 is going to be your largest heading. H stands for heading or header. So H1 is going to be your largest heading on your website. So for me, I'm defining my largest heading as semi-bold Poppins at 96 pixels tall. And I have an example of what that looks like. My H2 is semi-bold 60 pixels, again, as Poppins. Now you might have 2 text styles, and that's okay. You can kind of mix this up as you need to. I'm keeping it simple with all Poppins in this example. My H3 again is semi-bold at 48 Poppins, H4 semi-bold 36, H5 semi-bold 24, H6 semi-bold 20, and then my body styles, I have kind of a larger body style at 18 regular, and a kind of a smaller body style 16 regular. I also included caption as well. Again, you can feel free to use this Typescale. If you use another one that you've created on type-scale.com or Google Materials, the Google Fonts Typescale, then that's fine too. The important thing is that you have a Typescale as a part of this. And so it's good to include, what H category it is. So your largest heading is H1, your smallest heading would be H6 here. And you can see how the font gets smaller as we go down this Typescale. And to show an example maybe in text of what that looks like here. So all I'm doing is just, I have an example of some content that would appear on my site, and I'm just applying my H structure here. Now what you can do is as you create that H structure, here I've applied my style. So you can see I have Poppins 96 semi-bold here on my right hand side. Once you create that, what you can do is open up your character styles. Let me just do another one here that's maybe a little larger so you can kind of see how I set that up. So let me just, I'll make this let me actually make it my dark color that I have here. And I'm going to make this font just a little bit bigger again so you can see how this gets set up here. So I've got my font. Let's say this is an example of what my H1 looks like. What I can do is I can come into my character styles and actually hit this plus sign, and it'll create my new character style here. And so all I did for each one of these is just define what those character styles are going to be. Apply each one of these. So this is 60 semi-bold. This is 48 semi-bold. This is 34 semi-bold, and so on and so forth down my Typescale. And then after I've created each one, I've just went in and I've added the plus sign to each of these, and it create my Typescale as I go. And so why that's helpful is, let's say that I'm typing in and I'm leveraging my Typescale in this way. Let's say I have some body text here, and let's just have an example here. Ooh, this is so large. It came in as my last style. So let's say that I have some example of some content that I'm using on my site. Once I've created my Typescale, all I have to do is simply click on one of these, and it's going to automatically resize my content based off what Typescale option I choose. So you can imagine as you go to build out a 6-page website here for your apartment complex website, having your Typescale set up would be super important, because you don't have to go in here and select the actual font each time, add the character style or the type size, select the character font weight itself. If you set that up once in your style guide, you can use that over and over again, page to page. So really helpful to have this set up ahead of time. All right, let's go into some of the components themselves. So in my components, I have examples of the icons. Now again, based off of our minimums requirements for this site, you want to have a minimum of 10 icons. So I've talked about before some of the great plugins of Adobe XD. One of those is this Icons for Design. Icons for Design is a great plugin. It pulls an aggregate of a couple different icon examples. Some of y'all have used this in some of your submissions before, and it's a great plugin to have inside of Adobe XD. As you go and look at your wireframes, start to look at some common icons that show up from each of your wireframe examples. Pull some of those icons in from Icons for Design. And so maybe I want to include. Let's see if anybody has a cat icon or an example of a pet icon. Some of y'all have a pet-friendly apartment complex. And so what you would do here is you would just so you can search for whatever icon you need and just click on it. It's going to add it probably to the top left corner of your screen, and you're just going to build out a variety of different icons to give the user, to give your developer or your business partner an idea of what some of your icons are going to look like on this website. And again, because you've already set up your design, some of your style guide, I can actually change this to any number of the colors that I want or that I have set up as a part of my style guide. So here I have an example of a few more than 10, but some of the things that I feel like are going to come up in my UI design. So minimum of 10 icons. I walked through an example of how to create the actual buttons and create that component. So again, it's one of the videos that we've currently done. We've currently walked through. These components are really easy, super simple to set up. And if you haven't yet, you can find those videos on YouTube, on the YouTube channel, or also in the Blackboard. It would be around when we created the actual prototypes for project number 1. But your style guide should include some basic examples of button styles. Typically in style guides or design systems, you're going to have a variety of different examples: a large, a medium, or a small, or a large, a normal, and a small option. So here I have 3 different options and some variants of each of those options here in my button styles. We're also going to do input fields. And so if you're curious about what an input fields, think of it as a contact form, an example of one option within a contact form. Most of y'all are doing contact forms inside of your wireframes, inside of your prototype itself. And so setting that up as a part of your style guide is going to make it so much easier when you go to actually create your interface, and setting it up once is going to allow you to reuse those components over and over again, which is just really cool. So inside of my component library, then you can see here, I've got some examples then of my input fields, my text options, my button options, and my icon options. And I've also done my logo as well. I've created that as a component. So again, as you go to build these out, you create your button style, then you just have to click the add. Let's say let's just create a really quick button style here as well. Again, this is not going to be what a button ultimately ends up looking like, but let's just say I'm doing that. And again, I've already walked through this in a previous video, so please go back and find that. It'll be really helpful to walk through how to set that up. So here I have my button option, and you can see I can go ahead then and just add it to my component library. Then anytime I want to use this button, I can just drag it in. I can change this text out and say apply now, and it's gonna automatically scale it for me. Maybe I want to do another one that says contact us, and so you can see you don't have to recreate that button every single time you want to use it. You can do it once, set it up, and then use it as many times as you want by dragging it in here. So let me just show you why that's super helpful and is really fast and speedy to be able to set that up. So let me actually bring in my artboard, an example of that here for our project. Again, you want to make sure you're using grids. So I have that grid here. I'm just going to use components from my my design system here. Let me first bring in an example of a photo that I really like. And so this kind of scale is really large. I'm going to bring this down. Found this photo. I think it'd be a cool example of what this could look like. Here you can see again, like we've talked about, and we'll go in more in depth as we talk about prototyping in one of the next modules. I have my fold line here, so I know where that's going to come into play. I really like this photo. It's really beautiful. I'm going to create a box here because I kind of want to do a dark mode or a dark view for this. And so I love this kind of dark, rich, black navy color. So I want to use that. I also feel like I kind of want to use it as a gradient here also. And so I'm going to change this from a solid color to a linear gradient. And I'm going to just kind of adjust this. If you're familiar with how gradients work in Illustrator, it's very similar to that. And so I'm just going to select my color swatch here. I'm going to select it on the other end as well, just to kind of get an idea of what that looks like. On this end, I kind of want it to fade. And so see really quickly what that looks like there. So I've got kind of this nice photo blending in. That's going to create my hero image in the background. Also going to pull in one of my components that I set up here. Remember, I set up my logo. So let me just pull in my logo here. Really like that logo, really large here up top. That might anchor my navigation here at the very top. I also am going to include the hamburger menu here at the very top as well. So let me just type in the word menu. You can't see it, but because I already have my text styles set up here, I actually just applied that, and let me change the color so you can actually see it. Again, you can see how I'm changing through. Let me just zoom in real quick. And menus it's the same color I have set up here. So you can see, let me just change this to 24. I'm going to make this orange and bring this over to my menu. So now I have my menu icon. Again, I'm using the icon that I have as a part of my library there, and I'm just adding the word menu, and I'm changing the text style based off my character styles there. And also, I think in the top right corner, I want to include some of those global action buttons. So let me just bring in a large action button here that maybe just says apply now. And so I've got that action button there. And again, it's okay for your navigation to bleed outside of your grid. That's okay. That happens all the time. It's important that your content remains inside of this grid. Again, we're going to talk a little bit about that more in our prototyping video. Let me actually then just add some content. And so perhaps I want to say life and style on the railroad, because I've got the railroad flats of Chattanooga. You can see it's kind of dark there. I want to use my one of my larger headings there, and you can see because I have my type styles, my character styles set up, and I've got my color palette, I can really easily set that up and apply those styles to make it that much easier. You might explore and kind of initially set this up with some lorem ipsum. By the time you actually submit this, I don't want to see any lorem ipsum in your work, in your submission. But you can see here, as I set this up, I'm just going to add in some text real quick to kind of showcase that and show you how you can quickly apply those character styles that you have there as well. So just using an example of the lorem ipsum text. I'm going to bring in a couple other buttons here. So maybe my main call to action here on this page is to schedule a virtual tour, and maybe I want to have a secondary button here that says view our floor plans. So I just wanted to be able to quickly show you how, by setting up your style guide, how you can quickly leverage that to rapidly build your UI design once we get into the prototyping phase. So this step is vitally important. Again, it's taking what you've already kind of set out initially in your mood boards and creating a style guide and a component library so that you can rapidly prototype and rapidly design so much faster as you design your prototypes here next week. And so in a matter of maybe 5 minutes or so, I created my hero image. And again, based off of your wireframes, you kind of have the structure for it. And so combining your style guide with your wireframes, you should be able to very quickly build your ultimate prototype here for project number 2. So hopefully this is helpful, a little bit more in depth, a little bit more in XD to go over setting up your style guide. Take a look at the examples. You can use what I've done as inspiration or guidance as well. Make sure you're hitting your minimum requirements for this style guide, your dimension sizes, reading over those requirements. Hopefully this was helpful. Excited to see what you do for your style guides. It's a vital step in the process. And so in this project where we implemented a few new deliverables, we talked about IA and how creating an IA map made your wireframing that much faster. Now by setting up a style guide, it will make your actual prototyping that much faster also. So while for this project, for your submission to Blackboard, we're just focused on the end product of creating that PDF with those minimum requirements there, as you build it, definitely start to create your library in Adobe XD on the left-hand side here. And then once you start creating your UI design, you can leverage those components to build it that much faster. So looking forward to seeing what you all submit for your style guides.